Coming up on The World Today. Good news from Oxford University as coronavirus vaccines begin developing and they're said to be safe and triggers an immune response. The EU summit entered a crucial phase today, says Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, as leaders try to reach an agreement on budget and economic recovery. Plus, 84 people are killed as intense rain and floods sweep through India's Assam state. A warm welcome to the program today. I'm Akaite Afia. The race for the vaccine against the coronavirus received a boost today as Oxford University announced its vaccine called CHAD0X1-nCoV-19. It could be deemed safe and triggers an immune response against the virus. It reported trials involving more than 1,000 people given injections that led to them making antibodies and T cells that can fight the coronavirus. The findings are hugely promising, but it is still too soon to know if this is enough to offer protection, and larger trials are underway. It's a pretty exciting day in the UK as Prime Minister Boris Johnson has spoken on another vaccine still at its clinical stage, but being developed by pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca. Mr. Johnson, in a tweet today, described it as very positive, a huge well done to our brilliant world-leading scientists and researchers at Oxford University. AstraZeneca's experimental COVID-19 vaccine was safe and produced an immune response in early-stage clinical trials in healthy volunteers. Data showed on Monday with the strongest response seen in people who received 2 doses. The vaccine, called AZD1222 and being developed by AstraZeneca and scientists at Britain's University of Oxford, did not prompt any serious side effects and elicited antibody and T-cell immune responses, according to trial results published in the Lancet Medical Journal. Joining us now is public health expert and senior advisor at the University of Nigeria Center for Clinical Trials, Dr. Lazarus Eze. Dr. Eze, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us, what are you making of these breakthroughs with vaccines, especially from the latest with Oxford University that appears to trigger an immune response?
I think it's very exciting that we're having very promising vaccines coming up at this stage. Coronavirus has remained and is still taking a lot of lives, even as lockdowns are being relaxed and businesses commencing and travels resuming. It still makes so many persons at risk. So the good thing about the ChAdOx1-nCoV-19 vaccine that Oxford announced today is that it's able to elicit both antibody reaction and also the T lymphocytes. So this shows that with the immunoglobulins or the antibodies, that it has chemicals that could neutralize could neutralize the COVID-19 if it becomes very effective against it, and the T cells have the capacity to destroy cells that are infected with COVID-19. But it gives a lot of promise, so we hope that when the 30,000 trials among 30,000 persons in the US, 2,000 in South Africa, and 5,000 in Brazil happens, I also hope that they also consider including Nigeria, for the trials, because at the UNN Center for Clinical Trials, capacities are being developed to be able to carry out this, so that we have large number of persons around the world that will be able to demonstrate if these vaccines will provide the solutions we'll be looking for on COVID-19.
Yes, well, it appears the race for a vaccine is heating up with these announcements. And as you mentioned, Nigeria could also be in the running. So where are we with clinical research on vaccines and trials against the coronavirus?
Well, there's a lot of research ongoing, both in Nigeria and around the world. I can't speak to the specifics as it has to do with Nigeria, but I've talked with a lot of scientists, and they are doing so much, especially with our local vaccines. NAFDAC had announced that there are some scientists that contacted them to support in that regard. But of course, funding and the environment has been a lot of challenge, and the hope is that Nigerian government as well as companies and other sectors be able to invest a lot in our researcher, because there are a lot of capacities and a lot of will to bring solutions around this.
And scientists and researchers have said the possibility of a vaccine could still be a long way ahead. So how much confidence should we place in some of these breakthroughs we've heard recently?
Well, the breakthroughs give promise. For instance, the one that Oxford just announced, they administered the vaccine candidate in 1,077 persons, which shows that just perhaps in phase 3 of the clinical trials could have up to phase 5. And it has also shown that the side effects on the short term is mainly fever and headache, but it occurs in as much as 70% of persons. It's not been studied long enough to know a potential long-term side effect. So as it is, they are all candidates, they give promise, and is hoping that perhaps, say in 2021, we'll be able to have substantive evidence as regards to a vaccine that could be used. But for it to be able to demonstrate antibody neutrality, being able to neutralize the effect of the virus is something that shows a lot of promise and gives hope that perhaps in the next 1 year we could possibly have a vaccine against COVID-19.
Well, it's definitely nice to get a message of hope during these times. So thanks again for joining us, Dr. Eze.
Thank you for having me.
EU leaders are discussing for a 4th day the possibility of a post-coronavirus recovery fund. Germany and France said a framework had now been sketched during a summit in Brussels that has seen testy exchanges. The main division is between hard-hit nations like Italy and Spain and EU members who want to lessen funding. So-called frugal nations want grants limited, and 390 billion euros appears to be the latest compromise figure. They had argued the proposed 750 billion euro overall package was too large and should mostly be loans. Just before leaders went into their hours-long meeting, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen described the upcoming talks as a crucial phase and that leaders showed a clear will to find a solution.
So, after 3 days and 3 nights of a negotiation marathon, we're entering now in a crucial phase. But I have the impression that European leaders really want an agreement. They show the clear will to find a solution, and we need a solution. The European citizens need a solution. The European Union needs a solution, needs an agreement to overcome this crisis and to prepare Europe for the future. I'm positive for today. We are not there yet, but things are moving in the right direction.
Well, it does sound like we are moving in the right direction. Let's talk to VOA's Lisa Bryant in Paris, from where she's monitoring the talks. Lisa, welcome to the program.
Thanks very much for having me.
Of course. So tell us, why is it so difficult for leaders to agree on the recovery fund, and how should it be shared?
So it's a lot of money just to begin with. And I mean, it is the original proposal was 750 billion euros, which is roughly add another 100 billion and to convert it to dollars. So it's a lot of money. And the original proposal is something like 500 billion of this is going to be in grants. That is, as you noted, under discussion, and it seems like the latest negotiations have winnowed that down to about 390. So why is it difficult in particular? Because it's basically pitting what they are calling the frugal four, these 4 Northern European countries that are doing quite well economically, and who don't want to be just paying out indefinitely or just paying out with any kind of return. Now we're talking about Austria, the Netherlands, Sweden and Hungary. And they are worried about just sending billions of dollars out in grants, non-repayable grants. They have to face their taxpayers. They have to face their electors. On the other side of this equation is are the countries, especially southern countries like Spain and Italy, who have really been hard hit, not just by coronavirus, but previously by the financial crisis. And they're only just getting back on their feet. And they were among the hardest hit and in Europe of the coronavirus crisis. They would be probably getting a large chunk of these grants that would be among the biggest beneficiaries. And so that's one problem. It's not the only problem. And I'll quickly get to the second big one, which is that some Central European countries, notably Hungary, have said that they do not want to have the funds predicated on meeting what they call rule of law, that is democracy criteria. And they say that they will reject any funding that will place certain stipulations that they meet certain democracy criteria. And the European Union has been criticizing Hungary and Poland for this. So a lot of sticky issues here.
Definitely. And we understand that tempers are already flaring today with French President Emmanuel Macron banging his hand on the table and threatening to walk out. So how would the proposed sharing formula impact France?
Well, it was interesting. Yes, that was quite an interesting report there. Of course, what we're seeing is a lot of smiles, et cetera, officially. France would be normally among the southern countries, not as hard hit as Italy and Spain, but really financially hit and also hit by the COVID, one of the highest case loads, along with Britain, I should add, but that's no longer part of the EU. So the French government would stand to benefit, or France would in general. But what we've seen quite interestingly is the two powerhouses, France and Germany, teaming up to push through this package, saying this is good for Europe. And normally Germany would be on the side of the frugal four. So we're seeing the two powerhouses from each traditional side, the southern states and the northern ones, saying, look, we need to work together. And so we're seeing a slightly different look at how France is getting there, even though, of course, it stands to gain probably from this package.
Of course. And for what you're hearing, Lisa, what would be the best deal for leaders at this point?
So I think a lot of people think that this is a package that, with some modifications that will eventually be adopted, and that it is really necessary for Europe to reboot. I had a very interesting interview this afternoon with an economist from Bruegel, which is a Brussels-based think tank. He thinks that having the original amount of grants, that is 500 billion before it's being negotiated down, was really important because loans are payback mechanisms, and a lot of countries are really struggling and may have a hard time paying back loans. Plus, there are other mechanisms within the EU that can offer loans. So for him, at least, he thinks that having more grants rather than turning some into loans is really important. And the other big thing everybody's saying is that if the EU really wants to have a green reboot and fill its environmental promises, it really has to remember that, to invest in green, et cetera. So those are two of the criteria I'm hearing are really going to be important as the EU moves forward.
Yes, well, we're all looking forward to seeing how this turns out. And thanks again, Lisa, and stay safe.
Thank you very much. You too.
Thank you. Well, let's switch gears now to developments surrounding the new security law in Hong Kong. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he would be announcing changes to its extradition arrangements with China and Hong Kong, citing concerns over the new law. The changes are expected to be announced by Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab.
Yeah, let's be very clear. There is a balance here, and I'm not going to be sort of pushed into a position of becoming a knee-jerk xenophobe on every issue, somebody who is automatically anti-China. But we do have serious concerns. We have concerns about the treatment of the Uyghur minority, obviously, about the human rights abuses. We obviously have concerns about what's happening in Hong Kong. And you'll be hearing a bit later on from the Foreign Secretary about how we're going to change our extradition arrangements to reflect our concerns about what's happening with the security law in Hong Kong. We have to think about the human rights, the rights of the people of Hong Kong to participate in democratic processes, and people here from Hong Kong, and how those changes affect them. What we won't do, as I say, is completely abandon our policy of engagement with China. China is a giant fact of geopolitics. It's going to be a giant factor in our lives, in the lives of our children and our grandchildren. So we've got to have a calibrated response, and we're going to be tough on some things, but also going to continue to engage.
Still ahead, historical sites are coming alive with music this pandemic. One of them, the ancient Roman Agora of Athens. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. Beijing says the U.S. first published comments attacking and condemning China, defending its Myanmar embassy's response as clarifications and rebuttals as tensions mount between the superpowers. In a statement on Saturday, the U.S. Embassy in Yangon called China's actions the South China Sea and Hong Kong, where Beijing has imposed tough new national security laws, part of a larger pattern to undermine the sovereignty of its neighbors. In response, the Chinese embassy in Myanmar on Sunday, July 19th, accused the U.S. of outrageously smearing the country and driving a wedge with its Southeast Asian neighbors over the contested South China Sea and Hong Kong. Myanmar has increasingly become a battleground for influence between the two countries since relations between the government led by Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi and the West became strained over its treatment of the Rohingya Muslim minority. Authorities in India say intense rain and floods in the northeastern Indian state of Assam have killed at least 84 people and displaced more than 2.75 million since May. On Sunday, in the northeastern district of Dibrugarh, houses were partially submerged. Residents in the state's Chirang district were seen on Monday wading through knee-high floodwater. Meanwhile, Chief Minister of Assam, Sarbananda Sonowal, visited the flood-affected Barpeta district and surveyed the damage caused by floods. Officials warn that the water level in the Brahmaputra River, which flows through China's Tibet, India's Assam, and Bangladesh, was expected to rise by 11 centimeters, 2 weeks after it burst in banks swamping more than 2,500 villages. It's real. Musician and rapper Kanye West has joined the United States presidential race. Kanye held his first rally for a last-minute presidential campaign, ranting against abortion and pornography, arguing with attendees, and at one point, breaking down into tears. The 43-year-old former supporter of President Donald Trump, who has left voters confused over whether his campaign is genuine or a publicity stunt to help sell albums or merchandise, delivered rambling remarks during the event at a Charleston, South Carolina wedding venue and convention center. Well, our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, joins us now. Maria, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, quite an unusual character, Kanye West, joining in the race and pretty late in the day. So how is his participation in this resonating with Americans, especially African Americans, in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement?
You know, I don't know if many Americans are really clear on what's happening as he has entered the race. African Americans, to be quite honest, many of those who are now mourning the death of Representative John Lewis are a little disheartened by this situation, as many African American civil rights leaders fought very hard for African Americans to have the right to vote. And so in this time of real turmoil, social injustice in America, they're looking for African Americans to come together to work toward one concerted effort to ensure that all people have the appropriate rights. And so when you look at the campaign event that occurred in Charleston, South Carolina, that Kanye West had, people are questioning, how does he believe that this is the right way to represent the African American community, and the best way to be able to have a viable option for the presidency? And so this is, I think, more troubling than anything for the African American community.
Yeah, and so what's Kanye's plan? Is he running as an independent, or will he be joining a political party?
He's running as an independent. He's created his own party. And so, it's not clear whether or not he will really be able to be on all of the ballots across the country. And so the real hope, as we all know, that the U.S. is under an electoral college when it comes to voting. So many times you can have a popular vote as a candidate, but still not win the presidency. And so the hope is that this does not distract or potentially take away from where many individuals are looking for the country to head, and potentially have an impact on the outcome of the presidential election in November. So this is, really more troubling than anything.
Definitely. And I guess Donald Trump becoming president has given some hope that a reality TV star can become the leader of the free world. But really, Maria, what are his chances in this race?
Yes, you're exactly right. If we go back to, Ronald Reagan was an actor out of LA, out of, Hollywood. And so this is not the first time that we've seen someone that's kind of a reality television. But again, looking at even Donald Trump, which he was a strong supporter of Kanye West early on, and kind of where our country is today. It's necessary that someone that truly understands international relations, someone that understands domestic relations, understands a way to address issues of poverty, the educational system, which is taking an upside down turnaround as a result of the pandemic, and the crisis with the economy and healthcare in America, needs someone that can really understand all of those issues and has studied it for years and years and years. That's what's necessary. And so him being able to win the presidency, I think, is very far-fetched. But the hope is that this does not potentially negatively impact the upcoming election in the U.S.
Definitely. Well, thanks again for joining us, Maria.
Thank you.
The ancient Roman Agora of Athens, once the heart of social, political, and cultural life of the ancient Greeks, came alive again on Saturday with the voice of an international opera star. In a rare sight, Georgian mezzo-soprano Anita Rashvelishvili performed among the ruins below the Acropolis, while both spectators and musicians adhered to social distancing rules. The size of the stage, set up in front of the Agora's marble columns, was twice as large as usual, according to organizers, so that the pared-down orchestra could have at least a meter between each musician. In the brass section, a plexiglass barrier was placed in front of each musician as an extra precaution. The performance is the first of many Greece has organized in open-air archaeological sites this summer in order to ensure social distancing and stop the spread of coronavirus and avoid closed spaces such as theaters. Well, thanks so much for joining us for The World Today. I'm Akaite Afia. Stay safe.